like relationships are intended to be mutually beneficial for the most part. The best ones are mutually beneficial, right? Because otherwise, how sustainable is that relationship if it's not mutually beneficial? If it's only benefiting one party and the other party is not getting benefit or is, being hurt, that relationship is not going to probably last the test of time. At least not in the way that could actually create potential or create, new outcomes and results for those people, right? If it's mutually beneficial, now you can get into this generative space where you can build on what you can build, and you can build. That's why, like in a marriage, like the best kinds of marriages are the ones that are very mutually beneficial and they're open to more mutual beneficiality. Is that a word? Mutual benefit, so that you're always seeking to uplift and uphold the other person, and they know that about you already, right? And that's how you build relationships.
And also, just I don't want this to go unacknowledged. And just because it's mutually beneficial doesn't mean there won't be hurt. Doesn't mean there won't be misunderstanding. Doesn't mean there won't be conflict. In fact, those are probably necessary to build a common path forward.
Yeah.
And then just keeping that in mind. And so I want to kind of now go to like a framework here, and we've kind of described these things, and I want to kind of share it. What we have talked about is authenticity and vulnerability. So like when you go in front of somebody, being authentic means you're open to positive, negative, you're open to share, you're open to really get to know the person, not specifically for an agenda, but a possibility of a relationship. So there's curiosity involved, not just curious about what can I get out of this person, but curious about the person behind. And I always work through this with my clients, is that, and I always ask them this question, especially parents. I like asking this question because it stumps them a lot of times. Like, so whenever they're trying to support their kids, I'm like, so do you just look at your son as a son or also as a human being?
That's funny.
And they don't know how to answer that. They have no idea. And they only look at their son or wife or husband or business partner just in that role. They have a very hard time looking at that person beyond that role. And like, that's where the problem is. And they don't know how to go towards that.
That reminds me of when you were a small kid in school, you saw your teacher every day, but you never saw them outside of school until one day you're at the mall and you see them like, what are you doing at the mall? They're supposed to be at school. Like, that's the only role context you have. Like, what, they're a human being outside of school? Yeah, right. Doesn't make any sense. It's like, I remember those experiences as a child. Like, you're like, wait, this person's a real person? I never thought about that.
Yeah, and that's like, maybe we're wired that way, but there's and one of the things I always share with my clients is that I started developing a real relationship with my parents when I started looking at them as human beings rather than my parents. Yeah. Because as parents, I looked at them with a lot of expectations, a lot of these things, blames, and all kinds of stuff. But as soon as I looked at them as human beings, I'm like, oh, they're a lot like me. They're imperfect. They do a lot of stupid shit. They grow from it, and they've learned. They have some wisdom. Sometimes they don't, but they're just people. And that's exactly how I communicate to my kids, even since they were little. I'm like, listen, Baba's gonna make mistakes. I'm gonna do stupid things. I'm sorry, but I know some things that you don't know. So far, and you're gonna learn some things later. So the things that I know, our agreement is that I'll teach you. The things that you learn, you can teach me later on. How does that feel like? And at least the older one is so far good in the process.
Yeah, I actually really, really relish the times that I can, as a dad, say like, oh, that was my mistake. I mean, I didn't know that. Like, I don't know, or it's a mistake, because I want him to see me as a human, right? Even for my little tiny baby, like, I want them to know that I'm a human in that same way. Like, I want to be able to say, like, I'm not perfect. I don't want you to expect perfection, but you can expect love, and you can expect mutually beneficial relationship, as best as you can.
And that's not easy. Again, we're all experimenting with this. We have no idea what the next generation
is the idea I have in my head right now. Like, I don't know what's going to happen in the teenage years or even when he turns 5. Like,
I was on a podcast with Jason Goldberg when I told him, like, okay, here's the culture I came from, and we're trying this stuff. And he's like, now hopefully we're going to create a better generation than the last. And he interrupted me and he said, he's like, you're probably going to mess up your children in your interesting ways, and they're going to have their own interesting ways of growing through that. And I was like, oh, that's probably true. So again, going back to authenticity comes with vulnerability. That needs to be curiosity about the person, the human being behind, not just the role they're in. Care is an incredibly important part of being a leader. In the first story that I shared, I actually cared enough to ask about the person's son. And then I asked him, hey, can you introduce us? And then I encouraged him. That's why he reached out to me. And for example, I just came from this event. I didn't used to do this, but one of the first things that I did was I created a list of 20 or so people that I connected with out of 100. And I sent messages this morning after 2 days of recovering. I had it in my Trello. I started messaging. Well, what do they feel? They feel cared for. I connected with them. Now, I don't know where those relationships are going to lead. They might become clients. They might become business partners. I don't know. And I
They
tell
might
them
ghost
exactly
you.
that. They might ghost me. I don't know. But my job was to show care, and that leads to building a real relationship. And then support. So when I reached out to them, hey, I love to connect with you. If I can support you in any area, I'd love to. There's no strings attached. They even know that I help coaches. I've even told many of them, like, hey, listen, I don't know if I want to work with you or ever can work with you. I have some experience, I have a business, and I've told them over and over that I've worked with them, but they have no problem connecting with me. Why? Because they know that I care. It's like, and I want to support them regardless of where it leads. There's an authenticity in the relationship building, and I took action. That action piece and that list that I made was so important. And most of us go to an in-person event, we never follow up, we never reach out, and that's something I didn't learn. In fact, I was horrible at that. I've had to learn, and I suck at that on the personal life. I'm even starting to get better and better at that because of business. I'm starting to get better at that on the personal side.
Yeah. You know, that brings up like another element to this, which I think it all leads to trust. And, you know, when somebody says they'll follow up, but they don't follow up, that erodes that trust, right?
Yeah.
Somebody's not taking action or doing what they said they were going to do. No matter how curious you were, like there's an erosion of that trust, right? Even if it's subconscious. And if you are somebody who supports somebody else and you're seen as a supporter of that person by that, you're perceived it by as a supporter, that builds trust, right? Because you're not out for you, you're out for them. In that context, like they know that you're here to make it beneficial to them too, and hopefully they're here to make it beneficial to you. But you can build trust by having that support and taking action. I love that last little bit there because that's beyond just the interactions. It's kind of like an extra frame and like a follow through, right? If you don't follow
And
through,
that is the foundation of a business. If somebody if
also true.
think of yourself as an expert that has specific knowledge that you can support somebody with, but no matter how powerful your knowledge is, no matter how great your tools are, if somebody does not trust you, they don't know you, it's very hard for as human beings for them to connect with you and allow you to support them. So that trust and connection is the emotional side that needs to develop before you go to the, hey, here's what I can support you with. Most people try to bypass that and they try to do that too quickly, and then they end up with either getting ghosted or ignored or not responded. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't happen to me, but it happens much less than it used to before. And
Yeah.
even if it does happen, I'm like, well, that's not my problem. That's theirs. I don't assume that they're doing it on purpose. Something happened in their life.
Yeah, and that's
Also,
actually brings us to the point of coaches. One of the reasons coaches offer discovery sessions is to demonstrate how much you care and can support them, and also that you follow up and you show up,
yes.
right? Like they need to know those things before they will probably sign up with you. So
And there's another thing with action. So one action we said, the last point that we said was action towards reaching out to them. But people around you also need to see that you actually take action towards the things that you committed to. That's a very subtle point. So for example, throughout the event, I had a lot of realizations and I shared I purposely shared, here's my decision, here's what I'm going to do. And one of the things I'm going to be doing is within all the groups, all the people that I share, I'm going to be sending messages. Hey, I did this thing. Hey, watch my podcast. I did coaching in it. That shows credibility that you're following up with your word. You're moving forward. That it communicates something subtle that hey, you're going to do what you say. You're a man or woman of your word. You're going to show up as you say you do, because most people. And one of my favorite things, whenever my wife gets all anxious about when people say, I'm going to do this, I'm like, listen, 90% of what people say is just words. Let's wait for the action.
Are they doing what they say they're going to do is the question, right?
Yeah.
And that's a way to build trust. And trust is like when you meet people in person, that interaction will lead to some future interaction. And that's where that extra like connection happens.
And if you look at the whole system, even the capitalistic system relies heavily on that credibility. Your whole credit score relies on that in the Western world. What do they watch? They see your track record of how you use credit. What is that? How did you show up in your life? and they don't need to know everything about you. They need to see
Yeah,
how
actually,
did hey,
people have a trust score, a credit score in their mind about you and whether you are a reliable person who does what you say you're going to do, that you show up, that you are supportive. Like they're building up this idea, perception in their head. That's your brand in their brains, right? It's like
yeah.
who you are.
And
So
and just so before I kind of somebody's head explodes right now, like, yeah, great, 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 great. I gotta show up perfectly. No, you don't. You're gonna screw up so much in all this area. And here's a beautiful thing about whether you're in a coaching session, in a sales process, or connected to people, um, you have a lot of chances to recover. Usually people don't recover in relationships
repair is
because
not that
they
hard.
screw up thousands of times and they never pay attention. That's true with your kids. That's true with adults in your family. That's true in business relationships. You're learning constantly, and this is what it means to be human. You're not. You're a work in progress. We're all that.
Yeah. And how people react to your attempts to repair tell you a lot about them too, right? And how you react to other people's attempts to repair tell them a lot about you.
Yeah.
So beyond the first initial in-person connecting, there's all the future connecting that you're doing, and like, how does that go? Like, that's a really, really interesting, addition to meeting in person.
Yeah, for sure. And here's the interesting part that you just shared, that subconsciously we're all judging.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And we're not judging. Our mind is built to discern one thing from another. This is how it has evolved. Our brain is to create differentiations, reference points. How does this compare to? And it happens at such a fast speed that you don't even know how to control it. But as coaches, we learn certain skill sets. We can put pauses on them. We can be curious. You can, and this is why Daniel shared, like, as a coach, that is a skill set. You need to work on it. Skill sets don't just randomly develop. You shouldn't show up as an average person. You should strive to show up to be better, and you can train. This is the part about human mind is incredibly malleable. It can expand in all sorts of different directions. How can you do that?